We're live.
Hello, welcome to the Society of Authors at Home Festival. This is the final week. All events are free, but if you're able to, then please donate to our Authors Emergency Fund, and you'll find the link in the chat. I'm David Morley. Welcome to this special discussion about how to make great audio drama. You can interact in the chat function, and there will be a Q&A for the last 20 minutes or so of this total 60 minutes session. If you have problems, then please press the reconnect button if you have some connection issues while this is going on. And well, today I'm thrilled to be joined by three outstanding writers whose work for the stage, screen and audio has entertained millions around the world, and we'd like to know how the hell they did it. Ian Martin has long association with producer Armando Iannucci. He was the writer for the BAFTA-winning political satire The Thick of It, and for the Oscar-nominated In the Loop. Ian is a writer-producer on HBO's Veep, which got him 2 Writers Guild of America awards and an Emmy. And he co-wrote one of my all-time favourite films, The Death of Stalin. He's the writer and supervising producer for the HBO space comedy Avenue 5. His Radio 4 comedy drama, The Hartlepool Spy, won the Tinniswood Award 2020. So welcome, Ian. Rhiannon Tise writes for radio, theatre and television. Rhiannon's first commission for BBC Radio 4 was in 2001 when she was part of the Sparks New Writers Group. She won the Imison Award for her radio play The Waltzer in 2002 and has since written numerous original dramas and adaptations for radio. In 2017, she adapted Louisa May Alcott's Little Women and Good Wives as a 10-part series for BBC Radio 4. Rhiannon's adaptation of The Mill on the Floss was on Radio 4 this April. Her theatre work has been developed and produced at the Royal Court, the Royal National Theatre, the Soho Theatre, Arcola Theatre, the Lyric Hammersmith Hampstead Theatre, the Finborough. Rhiannon has also written for the ITV series Night and Day and BBC soap Doctors. She's currently a Royal Literary Fund Fellow at the University of Kent. Gosh, what a CV. Hi, Vicky. You're next. Vicky Foster is a writer, performer and poet. Her work and interviews have been broadcast on Radio 3, Radio 4, 5, 6 and Radio Humberside, and her poem for the Commonwealth Games in 2018 was part of the BBC's national radio coverage. Her play Bathwater aired on Radio 4 and won the 2020 Imison Award. Vicky was one of the BBC's selected poets for Contain Strong Language in 2017 and 2018 and wrote a new commission for them in 2019, which also featured in Hull's Freedom Festival. She has delivered workshops for all kinds of organisations and is currently working on commissions for Back to Ours and Ships in the Sky, as well as writing a novel and planning a tour of Bathwater. Hi, Vicky. Good. Vicky, I thought I'd talk to you first. You won the Imison, which I should say is also open for submissions at the moment to anybody who wants to write or thinks that they ought to win the Imison Award, which is for a new work, for a person new to audio, not just to radio, that's to audio as well. Tell us about Bathwater. It was a very personal production, very personal piece. Can you tell us a little bit about how that arose, as much as you want to, about the personal circumstances that kind of inspired that?
Yeah, so Bathwater is kind of about my own personal experience with domestic violence and violent crime in general. And that subject is something that I'd kind of been glancing off for quite a long time in the poetry that I was writing and performing. I was performing quite a lot at spoken word events and festivals and things like that. So I was writing sort of getting around the edges of this story for quite a long time, and I'd seen a lot of other performers sharing their own personal experiences and really found the value in that. And especially if you're writing about things like domestic abuse, which often the process that you go through takes your voice away, it makes you feel disempowered, and you feel a lot of shame that's not really yours. And so I thought there was some value in telling that story to other people who might be in similar circumstances. So it might be good for them to hear that, it's not your fault and there's light at the end of the tunnel. So yeah. point where I just was ready to kind of spread out into a bigger medium to tell the story, and I came to the conclusion that I was going to write a one-woman show. It started off as just a one-woman show, Bathwater, and then developed into a two-person performance as we went along.
Using your own life experience like that, how much of an emotional journey was that for you?
Like, massive. I think I maybe underestimated a little bit in the beginning, but obviously I'd written a bit about it that I'd sort of kept private already, so when it came to a first draft it was just enormous because I had all this stuff that I'd been writing and I just sort of put it all in, wrote loads of new stuff at first just to see what I had and sort of figure out, I think, exactly what it was that I wanted to say, because I found that out really by writing it. So yeah, it was, I think the further I got into it, the more I realised I really had to drill down into those experiences, because I really wanted to get into moments and share what those moments felt like. So yeah, quite a bit of revisiting difficult things really, but you know, at the end of it was a massive feeling of catharsis. Having shared it and had such a good reception for it was, you know, worth it.
Yeah, then just tell us a little bit about how that became a production for the radio. How did that process work?
So it was an unusual process for me because I'd been in Contain Strong Language in 2017, and Sue Roberts, who was my producer, she's also the director of that festival. So it was sort of there, seeing Louise Walwyn performing Glue really inspired me and made me sort of pick out the medium, I suppose, pick out this idea, focusing on this idea of writing a long piece like a show. And I went along, so after that, I kind of went around telling everybody I knew that that's what I was going to do. I was going to write a play. I was going to write a one-woman show. And I went along to an event in Manchester a few months later about how to write a one-woman show. And Louise Walwyn was actually on the panel. So she spotted me in the audience and came to speak to me. And she was, you know, like, told me that I should speak to Sue Roberts about it, which I was like really nervous about doing. And actually Louise had that conversation initially. Otherwise I don't think I would have done it. And we kind of went from there. Sue was interested, and then we wrote a commissioning proposal for Radio 4, and yeah, that's what happened.
So just for those people who don't know about the commissioning process at Radio 4, Sue Roberts is an in-house producer, is that right? So she's employed by the BBC?
Yeah.
So then you get asked by her to write up a proposal, and then she submits that to the commissioning editor for drama, who at the time, was that Jeremy, was that Alison?
I'm not sure actually, because
it might have been Jeremy actually.
Out of it for me, yeah.
Yeah, but so you have to write up a paragraph or two, and then they come back and ask you for more detail, and then that gets commissioned, and then were you tasked with writing a first draft for the producer? How did she actually work with you?
So first of all, I sent her that really, really long first draft that I just talked about, which was just everything, and Sue was quite happy with that. She said, you know, just get down what you can and we'll look at it. But obviously from that, what I needed to do was, what was really helpful for me, with some guidance from Sue and also from Louise Walwyn, who mentored me a bit, was apply a lot of structure. So I had a lot of graphs and grids, and because
Graphs, wow.
Sorry. Graphs, yeah. Graphs and planning grids, and there was a couple of reasons really why I wanted to be really careful with the structure, and one of them was because it was just so, like, it's set over 20 years. It starts in 1999 and ends in 2019, so it there was just so much experience within that to draw on, so I had to be really strict about what was going to go in and what was going to get cut. But also because it's such a, you know, if I was to reel off the plot line, it's on the surface such a dark story and I didn't want just 45 minutes of darkness, because I think that, you know, it's just too difficult to sit through, and also it wouldn't have been very skillful, I don't think, to have done it that way. So what I did was put the darkest point of the story right in the middle, and divided it up into 9 5-minute scenes, really basic stuff, and put the darkest point right in the middle, so that I had time at either side of that to kind of hopefully engage an audience and get them to come with me to this dark place, and then to get us all back out of it again before the end.
Right, that's very interesting that you approach the structure like that.
Mm.
And how much toing and froing was there between you and the producer?
So quite a lot. I think do you know, it's difficult to remember now, but there was a lot. Sue was brilliant. Like we met up for read-throughs, and she was really good at kind of directing which bits I should pick out a bit more, which bits were worth drilling into. So it was a really collaborative process. And she also supported me through it, because there were times, because it touches on things that had been reported quite widely in the media, like in local news and national news and stuff, and affected a lot of other people apart from me. I at times had a few wobbles about what it was okay for me to say, what it was not okay to say, and Sue was brilliant at that as well, because that, you know, I was unsure it was the first thing I'd written that was going to be broadcast in this way and shared so widely. So Sue was brilliant at advising me on that score as well, and also about encouraging me to kind of stick with the idea that it was really important that I told the story from my point of view, and not to shy away from that or be scared of that.
Yeah. What would I mean, having this as your first audio only writing job? How would you say, what was the difference between the writing for your own voice and for the stage, and for writing for other people's voices and for the medium for audio?
I found the medium of audio drama really exciting. One of the reasons that I love poetry is that I love the sound of words, and I love the rhythm of poetry. And so I found that in this medium, I was really able to play around with that. Obviously, I'd been mostly performing poetry at gigs, so it also allowed me to kind of spread out into different kinds of writing. So Bathwater kind of slipped between quite conversational speech, and then when I really wanted to get inside what was happening in a character's head, it kind of breaks away into poetry, so that we could drill down into that. So I found it really exciting to be able to play around with that. I think you share a really intimate, almost kind of liminal space with a listener, because you can take it in whichever direction you want. You're not limited by what people can see or what's on a page. I found it really nice to play with.
Yeah, great, really interesting. Thanks, Vicky. That's Vicky Foster. Rhiannon Tise. Hi, Rhiannon. I want to talk to you a little bit about, you know, having you moved from the theatre. Well, in fact, you do all three, don't you? Theatre, TV, and audio. How did you get your first commission in radio, and how much work had you done before you got to radio?
I was part of the, I don't know if it exists anymore, but the Scriptwriters Group. I was working at the National Studio with Jack Bradley, and he suggested that I apply for it. So that was like a group of writers. It must have been in the early 2000s. I think it was in 2000 actually I did it, and there was a group of writers, and we were all put with a radio producer who was already at the BBC. So we sort of had a mentor, and it was over maybe a 2 or 3 week period, and we'd go in daily and have workshops with various senior radio producers and listen to a lot of radio stuff, and then had the opportunity to write little pieces, and they would get made just for us to kind of take home. But out of that came an initial monologue, which ended up becoming the waltzer, which my radio producer said, look, I want to submit this, and she wrote the proposal, and it got commissioned, and sort of I had never really thought about doing radio before. I was very much sort of working in the theatre, and I think at that time I had done a little bit of telly, but it was quite refreshing because I had done some telly, because at that point I was kind of in this development hell where I had all these different treatments with all these different producers and TV, and it was just none of them were kind of going anywhere. So it was, it was a great process that something had actually started and was going to finish. So that was the first one, the waltzer, and Tracy didn't end up producing it. She went on maternity leave, but subsequently she's returned, because that was a long time ago, and we've worked together on loads of stuff since that. So yeah, that was my first kind of way in, and that was an afternoon drama as well, like Bathwater.
Yeah. So did you find that the process of getting something commissioned for the radio was more straightforward than for other outlets, or not?
At that time, yes, it was. And it was very quick. I think she had it happened very quickly. Sometimes it takes a long time to get some things commissioned. I had a radio drama that Jeremy Howe wanted to do, but couldn't find he didn't have a slot for it. And that was took 3 or 4 years to finally get the commission for that. But so it's never straightforward.
No.
But certainly it was easier then to get a commission. The telly wasn't so easy then.
Well, let's talk a bit about adapting novels for audio, which I think, because there's quite a lot of that kind of work, certainly in BBC Radio, and now for Audible, I guess, as well, which is another possible outlet for people. Let's talk about. So, what would you prefer to? We could talk about Little Women, or we could talk about any of the other stuff you've done. But I mean, how do you approach taking something that lives inside your head, like a novel, and get it onto into radio or audio?
I thought with Little Women, for example, we submitted that. That was I suggested it to Tracy just as a kind of, he'll never go for it, but let's just put it in anyway. And then that was the one that he went for. But we had a message back from him saying, do it with attitude, because if anyone's read Little Women, it's quite a sort of sentimental. I mean, it's a brilliant, lovely story, but there's a bit of, he wanted to just sort of bring it up a little bit. So I had that brief from him, so that was quite useful. And just kind of constantly reading it, rereading it, and marking down stuff in the text, on an initial read, just underlining interesting moments or key moments, bringing out the character. And I worked a bit with Tracy, my producer, on how we would structure, because it was 10 episodes, and we wanted it to be a sort of ensemble piece. So it was the 4 sisters had a kind of equal weight, because the novel is very much, well, it's never said it's from Jo's point of view, but you kind of get the idea that it is. But so we wanted to sort of expand that a bit, so each of the voices could be heard. So each sister had an episode. So we sort of, I just used the text and pulled those moments out, and sort of then kind of created these little separate episodes. And there was a bit of pulling. I pretty much kept to the structure of the book, or the 2 books. There was a bit of swapping over, and I lost a lot of stuff, but that's just how it is. You only have 13 minutes, so it's not very much time.
So it was 8 lots of 13, is that?
10 lots of 13.
10 lots of 13. And how did you deal with the kind of visual imagery and actually translating that to the medium?
I think there's a bit of a mixture with Mill on the Floss. Is it all right if I just jump around?
Yeah, sure, whatever.
Mill on the Floss, there's a lot of visual imagery in that, and we had a narrator, so we were able to kind of, parts of it we just I just pulled straight from George Eliot's work, but also you can use the soundscape, you can use the medium to create that imagery as well. And characters might say lines, so you can pull them out of the narrative and into the scenes. I did that a lot more with like Little Women, I think, rather than Mill on the Floss. We just used the kind of with the narrator to sort of, and that's a technique that a lot of radio producers, and if you're working with a classic text, they do use that sort of narration to move stuff on.
Yeah, so deciding on whether to have a narrator or not is a big decision, isn't it?
Yeah.
So did you agonise over that, or was that just something that is obviously you had to do from the start?
We knew we had to, because it's such a massive. I've got it here. I just pulled it. It's such a big book, and it was such a limited amount of time that we just decided that we would have a narrator, just for sort of time effectiveness. But I think and also it was quite a kind of initially I think we were going to have Maggie and the two main characters, Maggie and Tom, doing the narration, so they would kind of like we had done with Little Women, but then we just decided to have a separate voice completely doing the narration. But yeah, that was a choice that we sort of agonized, but we just felt because it would be the time that we had it would be better served.
Yeah,
and it sort of grounds the piece as well.
Yeah. I wondered, because theatre is obviously suffering terribly at the moment. There might be a lot of writers out there who are, working in the theatre at the moment, or have aspirations to, and now thinking, well, perhaps I could think about audio. Could you give any advice to people who've been in the world of theatre and maybe looking elsewhere at the moment?
I would say just listen to lots of radio drama or audio drama. Radio 4 is a good place to start because you don't have to have a subscription as you do with Audible, but you just listen to as much as possible, and I think then you get the sort of sense of what they're doing. And there's podcasts that you can download, and they're very quick to listen to. And also I think it's useful because the relationship between the writer and the producer is so important, that if you listen to a lot of radio drama, you might start to sort of think, oh, well, I quite like what that producer does. Maybe I'll try and approach them with this theatre play that I've written that was on, last year or was supposed to be on this year. So to make that initial dialogue with a producer, I think is really, really, really important, because as Vicky said, she was introduced to Sue Roberts and it went from there, and that's the way that it sort of tends to happen in radio. You sort of partner up with a producer and they take you through that process. So that's just listen to as much as possible. And I don't necessarily think you have to write a radio drama and then submit it to a producer. It's more the fact of trying to find someone that you connect with and who connects with your writing. I would say that's important.
Yeah, great. Oh, well, thanks, Rhiannon.
No.
Ian, Martin, I wanted to talk to you. I can see, but by the way, I can see behind you your lovely awards.
I was just trying to hide them in my head. I became aware that they were there.
Have
a look at this.
They're very impressive.
Yeah, we're apparently moving house in
4
weeks. So I've been doing it. Do you see them?
Oh my God.
It's tragic. They're all going in the bin. That's like 2 decades. There's loads of demo tapes and group stuff and awful fucking stuff. Anyway, it's a big pile. It's all chaos here.
Okay.
Can I echo what's been said by brilliant Vicky and brilliant Rhiannon? It's the element of luck, and it's finding the right producer. It's massively, massively important, because the first thing in any medium that any writer learns is notes. You have to love notes. You have to love what people are saying, because even if it's destructive criticism is much better than constructive, because if there's something you need to get rid of, you need to get rid of it as quickly as possible. So I was lucky finding Sam Ward, who was also an in-house BBC producer at the time. Are we talking about the Hartlepool Spy?
I was going to say the Hartlepool Spy, which you won the Tinniswood for. That's right. You're going to pick it up now. There it is.
Look, it's just literally all these books and shit that are lying around. This is literally on my.
Oh, I don't know. What's that book? Wireless World.
This is Wireless World from 1952.
Oh, gosh.
I think it's the one with. Anyway, it doesn't matter what's here.
Well, can you just sum up the story in a couple of lines? So,
Spy. Okay, but it's based on this legend that during the Napoleonic Wars, early 19th century, there was a shipwreck off the coast of northeast England. near Hartlepool, and there was one survivor. The only survivor was a monkey. The monkey was washed ashore, and the Hartlepoolians, having never seen a monkey before, assumed that it was a French spy and hanged it. Now, what's even more amazing is this kind of folk stupidity was embraced by successive generations of people who lived in Hartlepool, called themselves the monkey hangers, and the football mascot is Hangus the monkey, who I think was made mayor. Sam Ward, I met on a general. My agent set up a general meeting with Sam, who was doing TV and radio with the BBC at the time. And we got on very well. Again, really important that you click. And then about, I don't know, a year later or something, he said, I'm really interested in doing a version of the Hartlepool spy, the Hartlepool monkey story, because he lives there. He was brought up near there. And he said, there's this fantastic graphic novel in French. I'm sure, because he's so clever. He did read the original French graphic novel. Anyway, I got the English version. It was shit. And it was just, the whole thing was, I hated it. It was like this mirthless lampoon of social stereotypes. And it was horrible. It wasn't funny. So I said to him, I'd really like to do the thing, but why don't we do it differently? So let's assume let's assume a monkey was hanged. But let's assume that the people of Hartlepool weren't idiots and didn't hang him because they thought it was a French spy. Suppose the monkey was washed ashore, and then suppose that a spy master from London arrived. It was going to be Roger Allen for a year. It was going to be Roger Allen. And I wrote the part for Roger Allen, and then Roger Allen dropped out at the last minute. We got Michael Palin. He comes and says, "Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to do espionage, intelligence. We're going to do a double bluff. We're going to pretend to the French that we've got live survivors who will be interrogated and then put to death after a trial. And we will pretend that we've got intelligence about Bonaparte's invasion plans." So I thought that was a much more interesting approach. Yeah. Oh, you want more? So
no. I was going to ask you, when you're approaching something like that, which is based on fact,
yeah,
how much responsibility do you feel towards just getting to that truth, or do you just start with the nugget and then
zero? It's a legend. There is no archive that you can plunder. There is no record that you can pore over. It's just a legend, so you can do what you like, really. You feel as though somehow a monkey must have been hanged in Hartlepool in 1804 or whenever it was. We said. And then the thing, what happened next was, Sam said, because I started to put together this idea. You'd have an axis of power. You'd have this venal mayor, and you'd have this kind of expansionist vicar who wants an orangery. And here's the axis of civic power. Now the mayor's wife knows the landholder, the Lady Embleton. So that's in the power. That's in the power axis. And then this posh Cavendish spy master from London on very secret orders arrives, and then he's the most powerful person. And it's lockdown. It's lockdown. Hartlepool's in lockdown. No one can get out. What am I doing? Just gibbering on here.
Ian,
Vic and Bob. What happened was Sam said, "Oh, you got these two characters. Why don't we get Vic and Bob? They're Teessiders." Oh, excellent. So they were interested. And suddenly, the BBC's. Oh yeah. I think let's go with this. We'll slip you $3,000, I think it was. And let's have it. We did a short submission, got through, long submission, got through. Then Vic and Bob production company decided they wanted to do it for telly in like 3.5 hours, which is much more problematic because you've got a monkey to find and manage and a shipwreck somehow and we talked them out of it, and we swung back to a radio thing. And the story developed, and Sam was brilliant. Giving me notes because, I'd only worked in telly before. This was like beginner's luck for me. But yeah, luck, good producer, lots of notes.
But what was the difference coming from TV to audio? How did you cope with not being able to have someone walking in a big door with number 10 on it, and so you didn't have to say this is 10 Downing Street?
Well,
with all that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the learning curve was really short. I mean, after a few sarcastic notes from my producer about how nobody's going to be able to see him, but he's pointing at the sky or whatever, you start to curb the precinct that you're working in. But there's a big thing about radio and a little thing. And a little thing about radio is that you can make it very intimate. So intimate when two people are talking at properly low ASMR level talking. It's incredibly intimate and very tender, and you can pack a lot in, more than you can with telly. And the big thing, of course, is that you can have a shipwreck. You can have a shipwreck, you can have monkeys, you can have gunfights, you can have fucking explosions, helicopter crashes, whatever. Because if you've got someone like Mark Wilcox, who's this incredible sound engineer, you can just command this thing to happen, and it costs £3 or whatever, instead of actually blowing up something. So that's the big thing and the little thing.
Yeah.
Oh, the other thing was, for ages and ages, I wanted to do this thing. Because I didn't go to university, I became a hospital porter at a hospice. So a lot of dead people going out, and there's a mortuary, and this horrible initiation thing, because bodies are shoved into a cold room. Porters are told to open it. When you open the door, any residual air in the lungs is brought up and it comes out through the vocal cords. So it's this horrible ghostly and I always wanted to do that, and you can't really do it on telly because it requires 20 French corpses in uniform, all sort of breathing their last even though they're dead. So we just had me and the cast around the microphone just going for 30 seconds.
Yeah,
it was a highlight.
Just quickly, so a story that did have far more written about it, the death of Stalin. There was a lot of, obviously, lot of stuff you could go to get the truth of what actually happened when he died. There's a lot of, well, comparatively rich seam of factually based dramas on Radio 4. So there's a lot of people out there might be thinking that they might want to base something on a story that is relatively, well, it's more straightforward to research than your monkey one. But how, they'll ask the same question again, really. How much responsibility did you feel towards the truth, and how much did you just use that as a starting point for?
Well, it's a starting point, and obviously an enclosing notion that things happened. The things that happened in the movie happened. They happened in that sequence, but the timescale was massively collapsed, so that the arrest and trial and execution of Beria actually it took 3 years in real time, but it took a day, 2 days, or whatever. Directly after the funeral, in fact.
Did you feel you had to keep things in the same order?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a sequence of events that leads to the death of Beria, which is the climax of the film. But I mean, I came to that project with, David Schneider and Armando Iannucci had already put together a basic script because it's something that they were both interested in. Armando, again, actually from a graphic novel. Someone had sent him this graphic novel of the death of Stalin, using this sequence, but with very, very different characters. And again, maybe it's just me with graphic novels, but it was supposed to be this kind of macabre, dark humor. It was fucking terrible. And the Stalin's son was a really, really nasty character in the thing. Anyway, he'd had this plan for about 3 or 4 years, and then really wanted to do it. But they had a rough script, and then I came aboard, and we started to rewrite it, and then rehearsals, always very important, because then you find out, having bodies moving through space, you can find out what the dynamic is, but also the loose goes, the loose takes of the thing where they're just winging it when it's just improv. You can get a lot from that.
Yeah.
Where am I going with this? Nowhere.
Well, no, it was really interesting. Vicky, coming back to you again. Thanks, Ian. What plans do you have for more audio drama? Have you got irons in the fire and proposals?
Yes, I'm currently working up an idea. It's really in the very early stages at the moment. It's a bit different this time around because obviously, like I said, Bathwater had been brewing for quite a while. So I'm just pinning down. I've got my grids and planning charts and stuff out again at the moment, and just working up another idea at the minute. So
Okay. What about you, Rhiannon? What's in the future for you?
Well, who knows? I mean, I've got an idea that I've developed with Tracy, which is an original drama this time. So we shall see. It's in the hands of the Radio 4 commissioning gods now. So.
Yeah. Yep. Ian, what are you? You've got so much on, I suppose, at the moment.
Oddly, I've got another thing with Sam in at BBC, but I have no idea what COVID's done to the system. We supported. We sent in our short submission. This idea that I've had for years. It's like this marketing manager moving from London to the Black Country. To Tamworth to build it up into this world-class city, but it all takes place in the 8th century. So that the king offer is very much like Trump, but with a sort of Brummie accent. Anyway, that's in with them. We're writing Avenue 5 at the moment, series 2, season 2. We're hoping to shoot a couple of those episodes before Christmas, but I mean, assuming we can get Americans in an airplane over into a rehearsal space and on a populated set, I don't know. That's what we're going for. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've got time to take some questions from people listening and watching. Lynn Taylor says all these stories are great from all the writers. Vicky's Bathwater is brilliant. Any question for me is, how do you get to know producers if you can't actually meet them at events? Well, how did you get to know your producer, Vicky? Just remind us, you might have said earlier on, but how did that happen?
I knew Sue a little bit from Contain Strong Language and had been invited to be on the Verb and things like that. So I'd met Sue a couple of times, but actually didn't know her well enough that I felt that I could go and speak to her. So I didn't feel like although I did know Sue a bit, I wouldn't have gone directly to her. So I think it came for me by attending an event and sort of just telling people and speaking to people about what I wanted to do. And my experience was that people are really generous about connecting you and talking to you about ideas and which direction you should take them in. So yeah.
How about you, Rhiannon? How did your connections happen?
Well, I mean, with Tracy, I've known her for probably 20 years, but I mean, I would say I was thinking about this really, so I could try and offer some sort of helpful advice rather than just email them, because that's kind of impossible. Lots of the radio producers are on Twitter, so if you're on Twitter, it's worth, following them and making connections, that way. Also use the BBC Writers Room. Sometimes they have open submissions for radio stuff. I mean, I don't know if that's very often, but at least if your work's kind of in the system, then there's a chance that someone might pick it up. But it's I mean, you could try you could just try emailing the BBC or whatever, but I think that's a bit hopeless. But it's just, as Vicky said, it's about kind of, if you get the opportunity to go to any of these events or see anything, just kind of do make that effort, because it's a tricky one. But it's the same as any industry we're trying to get into. It's a hard one. It's just about pursuing and persevering.
But how did you do it, Ian? How did you go from? Did you say it was you working in a hospice? How did you get your first writing gigs? Were you?
There's a lot. In the last century, I was a journalist and musician. And then I was doing a satirical website with my brother, who's been made redundant, called Martian FM. And Arm saw it and liked it and said, would you like to write for something on Channel 4? And I said yes, and then blah blah, and then sick of it, and so on. But I mean the how do you meet a good producer is a good question, because I think if you find the right person who understands what you want to do, that's a massive help. Also, obviously, if you've got an agent, it's much easier. I mean, I hate doing generals. I mean, and I try to do as few of them as possible. But your agent will say, "You'll really like this woman. You'll really like this guy. I just want to put you in a room with them and just see if there's a connection." And I think it's tiresome, because a lot of the time you really don't want to be in a room with them, and it's half your fucking day gone. But every now and then you find someone and you click, you make a connection with, and I think that's really that really is that's the base. That's the baseline. That's ground zero. That's foundation stone.
Yes. Okay. Marinella Mezzanotte, if I've pronounced that right, asks, would any of you recommend trying short audio drama as a beginner writer? And do you have any tips for absolute beginners as opposed to writers who've already made a name for themselves in other media? Well, what do you think about that, Rhiannon?
Sorry.
It was would you recommend trying to just write short audio drama? I guess you mean maybe get out there and pitch it, already written, which actually
that can work. I mean, yeah, if they, why not? Because you see whether you like it. It's and also, I mean, if you know any actors, you can have a go. Well, not at the moment, but you could. I think, why not give it a go? Yeah, don't wait for the commission. Have a go and write something and submit it that way. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, it's a difficult one to know, isn't it? Do you go ahead and write something on spec and then submit it, or do you actually approach somebody with an idea, producer with an idea, and then help them work with them to develop it? I think it depends on what the project is, doesn't it? But the good thing about Radio 4 and Audible, who are commissioning things now, is that you can approach them with the idea just as a piece of paper, two pieces of paper. You don't have to. They may want you to come back with some writing samples, but it is possible to pitch ideas.
Yeah.
Without, I think that might be slightly different in the movie business, but because they want the script to see. But you can do it on the basis of the idea, which is great, isn't it?
Audible sounds like a really good route to me at the moment, and they're very busy. I'm looking forward to the pin. They've landed a show with Audible. Fred Armisen and a whole bunch of people from America roped in for that. That's going to be great, I think. And someone I know, Eddie Robson's got a deal to do 6 things on Audible. I think it's a good target to aim at. But I mean, to get back to the question, if you're not, should you write regardless of whether or not you've got anywhere to be? Of course. If you're not writing, then you're not a writer. So, whoa.
Yeah. I'm just looking for some more questions here from people. Do send more in if you got them. Johnny Mains writes, now I know Johnny is a very good writer of horror and other things. How do you keep up consistency when writing across an 8-episode arc? Difficult to not put all your energy into the first episodes. Well, longer running series. Rhiannon, Ian, Vicky, what do you think about
co-writers? That's co-writers, right? I mean, look. Here's the truth, okay? I mean, once you're on a show like Avenue 5 or Think of It or Veep or whatever, and you don't fuck up, then you're going to be back for season 2. So I mean, that's fantastic. That's great. That's money in the bank, obviously. On the other hand, we're all pitching stuff all the time, and basically the rest of your income comes from landing a pilot that goes nowhere. But you just take the money and move on to the next pilot. But the premise is that if you're as I'm doing now, someone's bought the rights to a book about a priest who is very good at mental health, but also tackle supernatural shit. So you pretend that it's happening. You pretend that what you're doing is rolling out the carpet for 10 half-hour shows about this priest who I've made black and coming from an inner city parish to land in Wales with this tiny, fierce curate woman. And the more you push yourself, can you write? I'm an old white guy. Can I write a black character? Yes, you can. If you've got a black actor and a director, but all the rest of it. But then you look at the stuff down the line, and you think, okay, what we really need here is a young woman co-writer, or a person of color, or a trans person, because one of the episodes is going to be about a service of transition, which I think is a very elegant aside to the roiling argument on Twitter about everything. So yeah, you need co-writers, and my DMs are open currently. I'm not on Twitter, but if anyone wants to slide into my DMs and pitch for co-writing a thing about some punchy priest in Wales who's going to sort everything out, then drop me a line.
What's your answer to that one then, Rhiannon? That's, you were talking earlier on about having to do 10, no, there are adaptations, but 10 parts. I mean, that's certainly in this country is quite a lot.
Well, I mean, but they're short. But I mean, the book's already there, so it's kind of not you just follow the book. So that's kind of, I don't want to say easier. It's about what you don't leave out, but what you leave out and what you don't leave out. But I was thinking about that. I suppose you just got to, I agree. I think co-writers a brilliant idea. But for like Little Women and for The Mill on the Floss, because it was all there charted already, I could just follow. I just segmented the book up, just sort of basic 10 parts, 10 chunks of the book. So sort of followed that route. And maybe if you're wanting to write a 5-part and 8-part, if you've got a whole story arc, you have to do the same and make sure that each of the sections has a beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah.
I love story.
Yeah, I've got another question here. Maggie Craig says, could we know more about Vicky's graphs and grids?
Yeah, I want to know.
I always do a timeline across a piece of paper and do it like that and put all my events on a timeline. But what did you mean by a graph or a grid?
There were a couple of main ones that I used, and one was like a line graph. So along the bottom axis, I had like the scene numbers, and up the side, I had like the kind of emotions. This was an emotional scoring chart. So like high emotions, like excitement, hope, love at the top, and then I think I got down as low as like despair in the middle. So just kind of drawing that out so that when I was writing each scene, I could really focus in on what emotion and what I was really going for in each, so that it didn't stay dark. I kind of used that so that there was hopefully a range of emotion across the whole thing. And the other one was just a 9-square grid, so 3 by 3 squares. And then I condensed each scene down into a single image or a line, so that was really, really clear in my mind what was going to be happening in that scene when I was writing it. And again, that allowed me to plan around what was going on emotionally, what the story arc was doing. I used also a system of after every 15 minutes having a bomb going off, so the big plot turns happened every 15 minutes, stuff like that. And also I used settings across the top, because everything in Bathwater happens in really domestic settings, and we return to them because it spreads out over 20 years. That was quite a useful tool. So when you come back to the first location, which was a living room, because I wanted to have that claustrophobic domestic feeling, when you come back there 10 years after you've been there the first time, then hopefully as a listener you're making a comparison about what's changed, and that kind of does a bit of the work for you as well. So I had like my locations set out across the top. Not complicated, but I found it really useful.
So it's really interesting hearing you talk about that. Did you ever think about getting one of these self-help books when you were approaching this this audio drama, like, you know, how to write a screenplay or whatever it would have been?
Yeah, I've got a few up on my shelves, like playwriting books mostly that were recommended to me. So yeah. In those and did a bit of reading around it, because obviously it was completely new to me. I don't think, not specifically on audio drama, but like playwriting and some of the ideas around that. Yeah, I read quite a bit when I was in the panicking early stages.
Yeah. What about Rhiannon? What do you use any of those kinds of books to help you?
Not for audio drama. I mean, there's a really brilliant playwriting book by Stephen Jeffries that I've
it's great.
Called. So, but I think it's. I mean, when I first sort of went into radio drama, because we were involved in this Sparks sort of format, there was a lot of advice given there, and you learn a lot on the job from your producer as well. But I think, I mean, in terms of kind of structure and following that kind of path, it's think about audio drama. It's a bit like a film because it's different to theatre. You can, as Ian said, you can go anywhere and you can do something very small and you can do something huge in audio drama. But I think the sort of, you don't have to have such long scenes, and you can have short jumpy scenes and move around all over the place. It's got that sort of, the scope is really wide, so it's worth thinking about the sort of, rather than a visual, it's that audio. I mean, it sounds obvious, but it's it's important to think about the sound and where that takes the listener.
But do you think of a number of acts for your plays on the radio? Do you use a 3 or 5 act structure or anything like that, or how's that?
Usually 3. It's I'm pretty standard. 3, beginning, middle, build up to the climax. Yeah.
But how, Ian? When you had to write your monkey play, how did you approach that in terms of structure?
Terrible. I mean, I really do admire the other two and everyone who uses that kind of discipline. I'm just a total wanker. I mean, I will obviously do a pitch document to try and get the gig, and that's discipline because you kind of think, okay, this is what the show's going to be about. But then when I actually start, I mean, it's like with the Hartlepool Spy. I think I work and think now in final draft, which is the industry standard for sort of for TV and film. So the Hartlepool Spy entirely in a final draft, and then magically it just transformed itself into a radio script format, as if by magic, the day before we went into the studio. But I am terrible. I'm terrible. If it's my project and I'm pitching, I'm doing something. Okay, at this moment, I'm doing something that's very exciting to me, which is I was commissioned to do a film for the BBC. We got it up to draft 2, and it's currently at the BBC at draft 2 stage. And I read it recently, and it's crap. It's lumpy. It's repetitive. It's disjointed. It's horrible. It's a horrible thing. So I've asked if I can just get in there, steal it, and then slip a new thing to draft 2 standard. And I don't know what I'm writing. It's like set in 1964. It's a play for today kind of thing being shot, and I'm writing this scene every day, and I'm thinking, oh, what's she going to do? Oh, she's going to hit him. Oh my God, she's hit him. What? And now she's kissed him. What the fuck is going on? And it's like those cartoons where you're laying tracks for the. Oh, it's Wallace and Gromit. I'm Wallace and Gromiting it just for my own satisfaction. But I'm terrible. I have nothing but admiration for the people who work to grids and that. I mean, you have to do for something like Avenue 5, for instance, you sign off a beat sheet and then you take turns. I'm writing. We've got a co-writer there, a very distinguished co-writer as it happens. And
well, interesting. A couple more questions. This one, I think Rebecca Abrams says, at what point do you decide on the length of your play, right at the start or further down the line? Well, probably right at the start for BBC, because you're given slot length. So I think it might be slightly more flexible at Audible. Isabel Defoe says, if you can get actors to record your radio play, is it worth recording your script to send to the BBC, Audible, producers as well as sending the script? Well, good question. I mean, it's going to cost you maybe, or unless you can get them to do it for free.
I think it ties you down too much, doesn't it? I mean, you'd be much better off sending them you're a writer, so send some decent writing. I think if you pitch something that's then recorded, I think you risk ruining it. You risk not giving it room to breathe. People who are reading things want to hear them in their head the way you hear them on coming out of your radio or whatever. I think it was a mistake, probably.
And it's a collaborative process between you and the producer and the actors and the sound, engineers. So it's kind of, if you're going to go into that system, you might as well work with those people. You're there, they bring you in, you have script meetings with your producer, you're there at all the recordings, so you might as well enjoy that process and you learn from it then as well. That's the
thing about enjoying it. That's the thing. The single best by a mile and a half advice for writers was given by the great Sam Bain, half of the Peep Show, right? Who wrote with Jesse Armstrong. And he said there are basically two modes for a writer: clenched and supple. And the trick is to write supple all the time, because if you write clenched, it'll come out clenched. And I just think that's the best tip I've ever heard. Incidentally, I'm getting loads of people sliding into my DMs. I can see. Quite good. I'll get round to them later.
Okay. Well, look, we've got to wind it up. Thanks very much, Ian, Martin, Rhiannon Tise, Vicky Foster. Thank you very much for taking part. Just everyone else watching and listening, you can submit your stuff to the Imison or the Tinniswood Awards. To go to the Society of Authors website, check out how you qualify and get your stuff in, and keep writing. And I hope you enjoyed today, and that's goodbye.
Oh, goodbye, everybody. And it's been lovely meeting you, Rhiannon and Vicky, properly, virtually. I was just saying, there's another one coming. Look.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.